Welcome to Corrective Consciousness, episode 150, the podcast where we explore the inanity of pop culture. I am your host, Lotus Prince, and this is...
OldManStompy.
And you can tell that we're celebrating the 150th episode because we're not including Vice in it. Hooray!
That is an anniversary to celebrate to me.
I mean, he's going to be the one doing the editing of this one. So, I mean, he'll hear all this. But it's fine. It's totally secret. He has no idea we're doing this. That's how that works.
Pitch me up. You know, he can make me sound like a chipmunk or an idiot. Or,
yeah, there we go.
He can let me do that to myself.
Perfect. Now I'm biased the vault. Alright, so anyway, for this exciting Corrective Consciousness episode, we're going to discuss the concept of completionism in various gaming. What it means to us, payoffs you can get for it, and things of that sort. It's something that the two of us try doing in a lot of the stuff we play, and often with, well, usually great results, but it can vary to some extent. So, OldManStompy, do you have any examples of games that you like to try to complete, or what you consider to be completing a game?
So, like, I will say that anytime I pick up a game, I sort of intend to play it with the intent to complete it. Like, as in terms of, like, I want to beat every objective. If it's got, like, a list of things to collect, I want to collect all the things. Like, that's what appeals to me. I was always a collector. Before I was a gamer, you know, I used to collect Beanie Babies, I used to collect X-Men figures. Yep. I used to be, like, pretty OCD about, like, collecting whole sets of things. I was easily taken in by, like, sets of toys and stuff like that. And, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people were, but for me, it was barely, like, worth buying a toy and, like, only getting one of it, you know, if it was part of a whole thing.
Oh, yeah, I know what you mean.
Right. So, a lot of the time I will, like aspire to complete something, especially now that, like, every game comes with trophies and they really encourage you to do that. But usually my, like, desire to complete something decreases, like, exponentially. It kind of, like, falls off a cliff once I get close to the credits, you know?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, like, I also try collecting all of the things or doing all the side quests, but I don't know, like, sometimes certain criteria just don't matter to me. For example, I'm playing Attack on Titan 2 on PS4 right now, and it's like as close to a warrior-style game as you can get with Attack on Titan. Like, it's a Koei Tecmo game, and there's you can get S ranks and missions, you can upgrade your equipment with materials you can acquire, but now that I've actually beaten the game and I have the ability to do all the missions again, but with an extra fight in there if you're quick enough with the objectives and you can get more stuff, I'm okay with doing that, but I start to lose interest once I realize that the highest level weapons and gear take ridiculous lengths of time to pay for and get materials for, because you just have to hack away at the missions for a while. I might just complete the missions and call it a day with whatever the highest stuff I can get by that point is.
So that sort of brings up what I consider to be, like, my best metric for what a game has to do to keep me invested until I get to 100% completion, which is, like, the cadence of, you know, objectives has to be relatively evenly spaced. The game that I can think of that really feels like it violates this to me is Ni no Kuni. So if I know you're, like, loosely familiar with this, but I'm assuming you haven't played it.
I have not played it.
So Ni no Kuni is a level 5 game, and level 5 games tend to have, like, a lot of, like, busy filler side quests that are often, like, really short, and Ni no Kuni is not an exception. Like, all the little side quests you can do in the game, they don't tend to require you to do much more other than just, like fight 5 or 6 monsters in the area. And by doing that, you'll unlock most of the trophies, you'll get most of the, you know, or achievements, and you'll finish, you'll be powerful enough to beat most of the game, and you will have gone through, like, all the optional bosses by that point, by the time you finish the final, like, official in-game side quest. But once you're done with that, the last 2 things are to, like, make most of the alchemy recipes, and then to, like, befriend most of the monsters, because it has, like, a Pokemon style mechanic. And those 2 things take, like, many hours after the point that you would have, unless you're, like, very meticulously taking care of things as you go. You'll have to spend a lot of time at the end of the game filling in your holes in your recipe and your your monster compendium, whatever it's called. I can't remember. Probably like they give level 5 in their RPGs, they give a lot of their stuff like really sing-songy, really like goofy names. So the Monster Compendium probably like in Yokai Watch is also a level 5 game. The Pokédex is called the Yokai Medallium, which is like really flowery.
Yeah, that's a little extra.
That also like it's just like Pokemon. Like completing the Pokemon Pokédex takes like 3 times the length of beating the game. On the straightest path. A lot of games that are not as well designed as Nintendo games also have this feature where it the effort required to complete the quote unquote Pokédex doesn't scale with the scale of the game.
Yeah, I would say what helps is kind of like what you said. Like if whatever the 100% thing is, you either get it for beating the game after having done everything, or you get some extra thing that's useful for the end of the game. Like, in a lot of the Yakuza games, if you beat Amon, then you get the golden pistol, which does ridiculous damage, and you could just stomp the last... Yakuza doesn't have dungeons, but you know what I mean, the last enemy area of the game. But I would say what really left a bad taste in my mouth, and I mentioned this a while ago when I beat it, was Drakengard 2. Because the thing with the Drakengard games is it's actually quite fun to get a lot of the weapons. And what's also cool is that as you level the weapons up, a little more of their story is revealed. Weapons can go up to level 3 or 4 or something, and with each level you can read a little more of the lore behind that particular weapon. But what really bugged me was that in Drakengard 2, there are something like 2 or 3 weapons that are either unlocked by beating the game on hard mode or unlocked on hard mode just before beating the game, and it takes an insanely long time to grind them out, and I'm like, I don't feel like doing this. I'm right before the final boss of my 3rd playthrough. Like this now, it's just chores.
Yeah,
I didn't bother with those.
Good thing that game predates achievements, otherwise it would have been kind of a pain. I mean, it's not like you have that many platinum trophies, but it would have been weird to trip at the finish line.
Well, actually, speaking of not having that many platinum trophies, I don't always go for platinum. I go for platinum if it's relatively easy to do. Like, I'll go out of my way to get this one trophy. Or, weirdly, if it's something like The Binding of Isaac, where completing the game is platinuming it, because you unlock in-game power-ups with every single trophy you get. Or the Souls games, because... I don't know what it is, but I just find it entertaining to complete the Souls games, or the Soulsborne, I should say.
And that's saying something, because like that's not easy to do, and it's something that checks a lot of the boxes off of things that normally would dissuade people from 100% completing things. Like, for example, the games are very difficult. The completion is somewhat arcane. It often requires playing the game multiple times.
I definitely use a guide, because some of the trophies, you're like, good luck figuring it out on your own. Especially another game with 2 at the end, with Dark Souls 2. It has a bunch of trophies that can be acquired online. Dark Souls 1 does this as well, with Covenants. But they have ways of compensating for that if you can't do the things online. So with Dark Souls 2, there are a few spells in the game that can be bought from a merchant, but only on your 3rd playthrough.
I see.
And it's like, okay, so like... if you feel like checking the shop on your 3rd playthrough, why would you do that? But look, there's a pyromancy that was never there before, out of nowhere. Like, nothing explains this.
So I don't know if you've ever played Lost Planet, or I know that Luminaire played it previously and is a fan of the series. But when I bought my copy, it was as part of part of the Greatest Hits release, which apparently was updated to really highlight the online service, and apparently beating the campaign. So this was an Xbox. I played this game on 360. Instead of a platinum, it's a 1,000 gamer score for completing the game. Beating the campaign got you 5 gamer score, and the other 995 points were all from trophies for the online part of the game.
That's some bullshit. That's just mean spirited.
I guess I understand why they did it. They must have had some reason to want to compel people to play online at the time, or maybe they were trying to push people to do it because the sequel was coming out. But I was very disappointed. I mean, there's a philosophy from some game designers that designers shouldn't give you achievements for things that you're going to do anyway. Achievements should compel you to do things that are sort of outside of the the normal scope. But still, I feel like really disappointed when I don't get at least like a gold trophy for getting to the like the final credits of a PS game, or like at least 300 to 400 gamer score if it's a 360 game.
Yeah, that is frustrating, especially when some of the games, like again the Soulsborne games, just beating the game at all should give you a bit of a pat on the back. Like it's not easy just to beat the games.
I can appreciate the 999 the Nonary games. So we discovered during our previous playthrough that more or less, basically just clearing the whole game and seeing every room will get you a platinum trophy. It is
and you might have wanted to do that anyway.
Yeah. So some visual novels are not as friendly. I tried to play the Blaze Blue visual novel.
Oh sure, yeah.
Cross something. I can't remember the name of it now. Cross Blaze. Someone maybe from the comments or
Cross
Vice.
Tag Battle.
No, that's not it.
Oh no, that's the new game. Yeah, I don't know. Every Blaze Blue game has some weird convoluted name that just who cares?
It has a subtitle that or it has a game title that would take you a while to realize it even belongs to the Blaze Blue series.
Okay.
I mean, obviously you'll realize it as soon as you play it. Not that the characters are familiar, but like it'll identify itself as a Blaze Blue game pretty fast.
Mm-hmm.
But to get the platinum trophy, and I tried to do this and I failed, and I could not figure out what I was doing wrong. You have to restart the game from a save in every single scene of the game, which gives you a little summary that you can read, and that summary is different, and you have to see every single one of those little summaries.
Oh, that's ridiculous.
And also you have to see every... I mean, this is pretty common in visual novels, even before achievements were a thing. You have to see every CG, so every picture.
Yeah, I'm aware of that. Yeah, but that can be very difficult to do.
That I could not figure out what I was missing and how to trigger it.
Yeah, that can be brutal.
So
no, you know what was also fun is
what?
when you said you had difficulty getting a trophy to trigger. In your case, you didn't know how, but what was really a pain in the ass was when I was playing Shenmue HD. There's a trophy that you can get from having a sparring session with your buddy, and I don't know how you trigger it. Like, it took me a while to get into a sparring session with him because he was never around, or would just chat me up and not offer to fight in the dojo. And then I finally did it, and I just didn't get the trophy for it. And then way later in the game, when I was able to do it again, that time it worked. I don't know what that was all about.
So it reminds me of one of the Suikoden games. So that's another game that even before achievements, you were highly rewarded for 100% completion.
You got stars or something?
Yeah, so for those unfamiliar, the Suikoden series are based off of very, very loosely based off of an ancient Chinese novel called The Water Margin. And in that, there are 108 people who are casts off of society who then wind up sort of going against the Chinese virtue of civil service to overthrow the government basically, or to try to. And so in each of these games, you have to collect 108 stars of destiny, in the spirit of the original novel. And usually, if you do, you unlock some secret ending, and oftentimes an entire extra part, or somebody somebody who died in the storyline comes back to life, which is often a very important character, or somebody who would die doesn't.
Okay.
So the consequences for not getting all 108 stars of destiny are dire.
Yeah, that's actually serious business.
And in the 3DS one or DS one, Suikoden Tear Crease, which is the one that didn't take place in the same universe, it was the last one that we got in America.
Yeah. It came out after 5?
There was it came out. I think it came out after 5.
Okay.
There was a character that you could only get if you talked to him a whole bunch of times with a lot of time in between each one. And I kept talking to him thinking that based on the walkthrough I was using, because it's impossible to get all 108 stars without a walkthrough, that I was pretty close to getting him to join me, and he never would. And he joined me at the last possible moment before the point of no return. And I don't know what I would have done if he had not joined me at that exact moment. And I don't know why he joined me then and not any previous time. Because if he didn't, I would have had to start all over again.
Yeah, that would have been brutal. This isn't quite the same thing, but it makes me think of... I've been playing Kingsfield lately, and there's this one guy you give an item to, and he's like, "Oh, I'll make a sword for you. Just come back and talk to me later." So you have to leave, and I guess wait for the area to consider you out of it, and then come back. And then he says, okay, I need more time. But what does more time mean? Because the game doesn't make that clear. Because, I mean, if you thought the Souls games were vague, you ain't seen nothing.
Yeah, you've mentioned this a couple times.
Yeah, Kingsfield doesn't tell you anything. Well, what it turns out you have to do is just level up and then talk to him. This is kind of like right before the end of the game, so I'm just grinding away on high-level demon enemies.
Jesus.
Like, this better be worth it. It turns out it was, but like, what does more time mean? Like, you need an internet guide for this, for everything. So, although I actually have almost beaten Kingsfield, I'm super excited.
So how does it feel? I mean, like, for me, I noticed there are a lot of games where like it's not that fun for me to play them unless I can try for completion, but that often means I have to use a guide. And what that means is like I kind of don't want to play the game that much because it's not that fun to play a game with a guide, but it's also not that fun to play a game blindly, thinking that I'm like missing out on like a whole bunch of stuff.
I would say it depends on the game. If it's a very story-driven game, then I might not want to use a guide and just like maybe if I care enough, I'll come back for a second playthrough. But for the Souls games, I am perfectly happy with the guide because they don't explain lore. It's just like, there's an item here, go get it. I'm like, okay. So I have absolutely no problem doing that. In Kingsfield, a guide is just straight up mandatory. Like, you must use a guide. I told you this off the air, but my copy of Kingsfield comes with a prepaid phone card for the hint phone line. Like, that's...
Yeah,
they knew.
That is mind blowing. So this is something that our listeners may not be familiar with at all. Like, at least when we were children, if you got stuck in a game, you had to call like a 900 number, which in America for our non-American viewers is like a pay as you go phone number that they would tell you to get your parents' permission. But God, I bet there are a lot of kids who ran up hundreds of dollars in their parents' phone bills.
Well, I was just going to say, they're telling you to get your parents' permission to save your goddamn life. Like, your parents will kill you if you just call them and talk for, like, even 10 minutes. Like, they'll be like, why is there, like, a $20 phone bill? Like, what the fuck is this?
These were, like, $1 a minute. This is not a joke.
Yeah, it was crazy. Yeah. Like the first minute or something is free, but then you just get blasted. It was either that or go to the store and buy a strategy guide, but... Kingsfield doesn't have a freaking strategy guide. That game is obscure as hell as it is. Like, who's gonna make a strategy guide for it?
Yeah, well, so, I mean, like, this was before GameFAQs existed, and I guess it did exist, but a lot of the guides were bad, and a lot of them didn't exist.
That is true. No, actually, this is getting a little off topic, but something that really irritates me when reading GameFAQs guides is when they try to be cute. Where like especially if I'm doing like a time sensitive thing or like a skill sensitive thing, you better make sure you do this and that and do that next. And the guide's like, so that was pretty crazy, wasn't it? I'm like, shut the fuck up. What do I do next? Like, it just drives me crazy when they try to like throw in a little attitude like, so like, you think you can make that leap of faith? I bet you can't. I'm like, can you just tell me what the next step is, please? Like, I mean, I'm not looking for bullet points here, but like, Jesus Christ, don't actively distract yourself. It just frustrates me.
So when I looked at the first guide that ever wound up on GameFAQs for Earthbound,
that must have been fun.
The strategy that the author posited for a lot of the later dungeons, or rather, I wouldn't say it's strategy so much as their personal experience. They would just say like, oh, I went into this dungeon, I kept dying and reviving myself, and when you revive yourself in Earthbound, only Ness is alive, and you have to revive the other party members.
Yeah, it's awful.
So what happened was he would just keep, or they, I don't know who it was personally, would just keep banging their head against the dungeon until Ness was level 99 and would steamroll all the random battles.
Oh, that's a terrible strategy.
And I'm reading this like, this is not a strategy. I could have figured this out for myself. I'm looking for a guide, because I would like to maybe save myself the pain of just, like, bashing my head against the wall for 5 hours.
Against playing the game for 1,000,000 hours. Although, I will say, one thing I'm very forgiving toward in strategy guides is when the game's pretty new, again, especially Soulsborne stuff where nobody knows anything, and they're like, one strategy is this. Someone told me they tried that as well. That seems to work. Like, I'm okay with stuff like that.
Oh, of course.
Instead of just like, I don't know, man, figure it out. It's like, I thought you were the guy.
I mean, it's fair. Like, when you watch speedruns and stuff, like, a lot of the more complex games that are also very fun to play tend to have, like, details of the battle system that people only just figure out, like, 10 years after the game comes out. Or
Oh
like
yeah.
if it's a game for a newer system, like it takes that long for the game to be decompiled, and sometimes people like digging through the code discover new things about it. Like
Yeah, actually, well, that kind of reminds me. Like in Dark Souls 2, did you ever play Dark Souls 2?
it is the one that and Demon Souls are the one Souls-like game that neither Mitz nor I have played.
Okay, because like there's this one guy, King Vendrick, that you've been chasing through like of arguably the majority of the game, and you could finally catch up to him, and you can choose to fight him. And I was looking up strategies before getting to him, and they were like, here's what you want to do if you're like a ranged guy. Here's what you want to do if you're a sorcerer. And then somewhere one of the bullet points it said, if you're a heavy melee type, this fight is just not viable. And like my heart stopped because that's like my character type. I'm like, what?
Yeah, you must be shitting me.
Yeah, I mean, look, the thing is, Dark Souls 2 is actually by far the easiest game to respec in. You can completely respec.
Okay.
So, yeah, but I was just like, what? And then it turns out, like, I looked up somewhere, like, scrolling down in the wiki, there's actually a very easy strategy if you're heavy melee, but, like, you have to figure that out. Because the thing with...
Of course there is.
But like a particularly easy strategy. It's just that like you might not know that when you first try playing the game because this guy has a gigantic arc range with his sword and it'll 1 or 2 shot you. So someone's like, no, fuck melee. I'm like, oh, that's not good. So it was a good thing that somebody managed to figure it out later.
Oh, I have another question for you. Do you feel like if you're intending to let's play something that you're more or less compelled to try to like at least not quite 100% complete it, but like do as much as you can to show off the game?
I actually do try doing that, yeah. I'll only not do that if, like, as I play, I discover I'm really not feeling the game. For something, or if it's, like, the Silent Hill games where I'll just YouTube the other endings because you have to play the entire game again for the other ending, and the entire game again for the third ending and the fourth. I'm like, I'm not doing that, dude.
Nice.
Like, I'm not playing. Like, I'm not playing a game 5 times and keeping it secret. Like with the Souls games, I actually do that, but like, I really really enjoy doing it, and I don't mind it at all. But like, for a horror game where it's just like, okay, now go through the motions again, it's like, because like there are other things to do on subsequent Souls games plays.
What's your metric for what actually makes the cut when you're filming it for a let's play, like on a second playthrough of a game?
What do you mean?
Like,
what makes the cut?
Do you show the whole second playthrough again, or?
Oh God, no! That would be like 90% redundancy. It's like, here we go through the same level again. I'm not doing that. Like, I'll just cut to the other ending, like right before the final boss or something, and be like, here, let's show what the second ending is like, because otherwise, it's just like I did that with Clock Tower. I think, if memory serves, I think I did full playthroughs to get to every ending for Super Nintendo Clock Tower, because the game is really short. But even so, a lot of it was redundant. And so it's just kind of like, well. Like, the only reason I didn't cut directly to the endings there is that the video would have been like 2 minutes long.
Yeah. I will say that, like, I've only done a few Let's Plays, but I specifically did Dual Hearts as a Let's Play because I felt like that...
You really went all out for
that I
one.
could actually do it 100% complete, which I completely failed to do. I barely got anything when I played through the game the first time because it's not super difficult at all. So, like, it really wasn't necessary.
Didn't you perfect Alundra as well? You got all those, like, falcons?
I did do that, and I did it because I was emulating, and
yeah, because you had that gambling level, you're like, fuck this.
I actually did that, honestly, on the PlayStation, but I forgot to save.
Oh, no.
So, like, what a disaster. Like, what an idiot.
No. That is unfortunate. Like, oh, what? Time for dinner. You turn it off, and you're like, oh, shit.
Yeah, I honestly have no recollection. Like, I think I did it much, much later after like autosaving became a thing, and I just did not even occur to me because I had nothing left to accomplish in the game that I had to do one last save. I don't even know if I remembered how to save in that game.
Oh, I gotcha. That is the thing. It's like once you go PS3 and PS4, it's actually a little disorienting to go back and like find a save point. I'm like, oh yeah, save points. Like even Resident Evil, with Resident Evil 4, you had to find save points, but that was it. And in older Resident Evils, you had a quantity of saves in your inventory.
Tomb Raider really too, also, right? The original Tomb Raider had like a fixed number of saves that you had to like deploy.
That I wouldn't know. Although I think with the original Tomb Raider, one of the versions had like save points, I think, like save crystals. Maybe it was like the Saturn version or something. It was handled a little bit differently.
That might be what I'm thinking of.
This is a really weird thing to bring up, but like the only reason I am is because I Let's Played it, like kind of as a joke. But Conker's Pocket Tales on the Game Boy, you have to find save points on the Game Boy if you play it on a Game Boy. But if you're playing it on a Game Boy Color, then I think it just constantly saves if you just like pause and unpause, or like if you choose the save option in the pause menu or something like that. Like, it's extremely easy to save in the Game Boy Color version, so like you should, because one of the bosses is like technically broken.
Oh, great.
It's such a pain in the ass.
That was the one that was like just a regular Conker game, right? Before they had redeveloped him into have the attitude that he did for the N64 version.
Yeah, I think the N64 version was also going to be like a sequel and kind of cutesy, and then they just didn't.
Well, it was remade several times, if I'm not mistaken. Like,
yeah, actually, I have a VHS tape. Like, you know how Nintendo would release those videotapes for like previews for upcoming stuff? I have a VHS tape where, of all people in the world, John Lovitz is delivering the commentary for the upcoming Conker's 12 Tales.
Oh yeah, I have those videos. You got them from Nintendo Power, I think, right? Like,
yeah, I mean, I didn't. Like, I found some of these videos later. Like, my brother got like maybe one of those videos from Nintendo Power, but he didn't have Nintendo Power before that. So I like found those other VHS tapes. The VHS tape we got from Nintendo Power, it advertised Jet Force Gemini, and it talked about Ocarina of Time, and it mentioned the giant, like, orange fill your wallet rupee in the Lost Woods, and that blew my mind. I had no idea that existed. Like, I didn't think those tapes would have actual secrets that, like, experienced players wouldn't know already, but that one really blindsided me.
It's also like something that you would spend like $20 on back in the day. Like you would go on into like Game Pro or whatever, or like EGM or something, and like there'd be like a paper advertisement for like the best tricks on all the games. Like, pay $20 for this VHS tape.
Yeah, but that was a legit trick, and like in the John Lovitz thing, he mentions that green ghost who's just like more of an obstacle than an enemy in Banjo-Kazooie. Mm-hmm. But then he was like, "Oh, you can Gold Feather and kill him." I was like, "Are you kidding?" Like, that was like, again, like, legitimate good advice.
It's also like if you watch the videos of like Super Mario World, you find out that like the slide will kill everything, including the bubbles and the giant boos.
Oh, I think I knew about the boo, but the bubbles is crazy.
The cannonball.
Oh, actually, one thing I saw in a speedrun that really got me is, I forgot what power-up it is in Mario 3 or something, or Mario World, I forgot, where you, like, turn into a statue. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, the Tanuki suit.
Oh, that's the one that lets you do that?
Mm-hmm.
Well, apparently, if you jump... I think you could kill, like, the thwomp blocks if you Tanuki, like, above them and fall on them or something. Oh. It was something really weird that you didn't think you could kill.
Yeah, I think you can kill rotodiscs, too, which is also something that you wouldn't think... The little disco ball guys, I think that's also something... I saw a picture of that in the Nintendo strategy guide.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, those were just something. It's not even like, how do I kill these? You just wouldn't consider it, which was just kind of interesting.
You know, I've never 100% completed Super Mario World. I know that you've never really played it, but for me, I played the game so many times. It's shocking that I didn't.
I just couldn't get into it, so like I just used all the level skips I could find and technically beat the game, but it was bullshit. It was like probably like 12% completion or some really weak number. Like, you know, if you warp whistle twice in Mario 3, it's like, there, I beat the game. Like, yeah.
It's true. So there are definitely some levels that I never beat in Super Mario 3 just because I stopped playing it after I beat it like 20 times as a kid. You know? And in Mario World, I know there was at least one level that I couldn't figure out, even though I knew how to do it, because... So in Mario World, there's what's called like control coin blocks, where like you hit a coin block and like a coin comes out, but you can like control it with the control pad. And I never understood how it worked, and you had to like make a path, and you hit a P switch, and then you would like ride the blocks up to a
bizarre.
To a secret exit.
That's a clever idea though.
And like I always felt really dumb because it's obvious how it works now in retrospect, but as a kid I just like could not wrap my brain around it. And
well, you wouldn't think you're controlling the coin. You just hit the block and you're like, it goes up, I guess.
Well, to me it looked like it was just going randomly, and like it would eventually just like stop. You know, it would hit something, or especially if I was like if it hit the block that it came from, it would also immediately stop. So I think I would just always do something wrong when I hit the block.
Yeah, it's frustrating. Then you gotta leave the room and come back, or like abandon the level and come back or something. Yeah, that's a pain. Although actually going back to also other forms of completion, I had mentioned this briefly before, But in the Yakuza games, I don't really care about trophies, especially because some of them require you to really go out of your way. But I consider the Amon fight to be completion for me. Like, not so much in Yakuza 6, but in the other Yakuza games, you pretty much have to have done everything to unlock Amon. Actually, Yakuza Kiwami 2, you could fight him way early, I think. Like, he's just like a submission. But usually in the Yakuza series, you must complete every submission in the game to unlock his final submission. So, or sub-story, I should say. So, to do those, some of those are really difficult. So, Amon is kind of like the big payoff. It's a super hard fight. You're probably going to be max level by the time you fight him. And he'll usually give you some really cool thing. Like I mentioned, from Yakuza 3 and onward, it was a golden gun. I don't remember if he gave that to you in 6. In 5, that gun was freaking nerfed. But in 3 and 4, it was broken. It was doing like shotgun damage, except it's an infinite ammo pistol. It was ridiculous. And in Yakuza 2, he gave you a brand new heat action, which was pretty cool. It was kind of like a... just sort of like a victory lap thing. And in Kiwami 2, he does that too. But in the original Yakuza 2, it was the most broken freaking thing. Because in a few Yakuza games, you can find... it's called something like the God of War necklace or bracelet or something, where when you wear it, you can do heat actions no matter how little heat you have. Unless the heat action specifies you must have full health or something. But you could just do heat actions otherwise whenever you want. It was insane.
I feel like something very similar. I actually remember that in, I think it's Legend of Dragoon, like something that had almost the exact same name was like some broken accessory that you could get, like War God's bracelet or whatever.
Yeah, something like that.
I feel like it's like a translation of the same thing. It's kind of funny.
I wouldn't be surprised. But in the original Yakuza 2 on PS2, that wasn't an accessory. It was just one of your character traits. So you didn't need to take up an inventory slot. You could just do it. Like, it was unlocked like an ability. It was absolutely bonkers. In Fist of the North Star Lost Paradise, though, that one did things really weirdly. Amon was actually the second to last sub-story. He's the last one in the game's main story, but for the first time in any of the Yakuza games ever, the last sub-story was in premium game mode. That's when you've already beaten the game and you can kind of do an in-game plus, but it just lets you run around and pick up side quests you missed. So one is unlocked in that. And it wasn't even that impressive. I was like, alright. Like, I just beat Amon. Like, what's the final sub-story? And it's just like a lesser fight. Like, okay, I guess. Although the Amon fight was pretty entertaining, because he was taking on traits of enemies I've already beaten. So after I fight him for a while, he just, like, gains a different boss's moveset. That was pretty interesting, because Amon does not typically do that. But you wouldn't fight Amon like you would in a Yakuza game, because the controls are just different in Fist of the North Star. Speaking of controls... Oh, go ahead.
They did something like that in Spider-Man. So it isn't quite the 100% optional fight, but it seems to me like the hardest single fight in the main game. Sure. Which is against the Taskmaster.
Oh no! And his whole gimmick is he has other people's moves.
Yeah. So like as you fight him, he will like pick up the thing that you use to beat him, or like to like score a bunch of hits on him, and he'll become immune to that thing and start using it against you, which is like really weird because he's not fucking Spider-Man. So
Mr. Freeze did that in Arkham City.
Well, that's a little different. Like Mr. Freeze is just like there's 5 ways to beat him in this room. You have to do all 5 of them, and he'll freeze up one of them after.
You know that now, but the first time he just shuts off the thing you just did, and you're like, what?
Mm. Oh yeah.
So it's like yeah. Okay, so you get creative, and he shuts that down too. It's really cool the first time, but with Taskmaster, you know what you're getting into. It's just way harder. But what I was going to mention, though, is speaking of movesets that weren't designed for the game, this is a weird game to bring up, but Anarchy Reigns, I forgot what it was called in Not America, like something Anarchy, I forgot what it was, but Anarchy Reigns is sort of a spiritual successor to Mad World on the Wii, except Anarchy Reigns is on the PS3. I forgot if it was on
Max
the 360.
Anarchy.
Max Anarchy, there you go, thank you. But the thing with that game is it's made by Platinum Games, which used to be Clover Studios. So in in God Hand, there was a recurring mini-boss called Tiger Joe, who fought with sort of, well, I think it was like Muay Thai, like a bunch of kicks and knees and stuff. But there was like a robot enemy in Anarchy Reigns, that sort of just like a wink back at him called Cybrid Joe, and he has a few of his moves. But Anarchy Reigns plays very differently from God Hand, so like they make the moveset make sense in the game. But if you do any of the not story stuff, like some just time attack missions, there's one particular mission where if you are blazingly fast, you have to beat like 10 waves of enemies or whatever, and if you do it super fast, because the whole thing is timed, then the robot waiter that everybody just shits on the whole game, he's always just like I don't want any trouble. He's like the robot bartender like in a Western, so he always cowers and hides. He'll jump out and fight you, and he actually has Tiger Joe's full moveset, which is total bullshit because he plays like a God Hand enemy in a game that is not God Hand, and he just beat the shit out of me. Like, I never actually managed to beat him. He's brutally difficult, although it was really funny to see him come out.
I mean, is the problem that, like, in God Hand you can, like, dodge everything in real time? Like,
yeah, like, in Anarchy Reigns, you're, like, even just movement feels very different. It's more like you're a little more over the character's head. It's not left turns you left, kind of. Like, God Hand is almost tank controls. And you got the juke system. You have an insanely customizable moveset. Anarchy Reigns, you really don't, because it's not supposed to be God Hand. But this robot just has the Tiger Joe in full moveset, and he will use it, and you are not ready for it. It's so brutal. It's just like a joke. Like, it's a super hard fight, but it's kind of like a joke fight, because it's like, look at this.
I am also like somewhat amused that they're like, and this still came up like last week. That still people are still really angry about the IGN review of God Hand.
Honestly, I'm still kind of mad about that. Like, I'm not mad about that, but, like, that was the most boneheaded... I think IGN actually, like, a couple months ago, some other person released a review that was like, actually, this game's pretty cool if you know what it is. And I'm like, yeah, it sure would be nice if game reviewers knew what the fuck they were playing when they reviewed them. Like the first guy, but I'm glad you understand. Because, like, the thing is, it's not just some salty reviewer. A lot of the information in the original God Hand review was just objectively false. So which made it all the more frustrating. There's no crowd control. Yes, there is. It's just you have to know how to do it. Enemies appear out of nowhere. No, they don't. Except for the one level where that's the gimmick. It was just really frustrating. This game's bullshit hard. It says in the trailer, this game is ball-bustingly hard. That's literally what it says. Like, I don't know what you wanted. But God Hand's a solid game if you can get used to it. Because it is brutal. The first level is brutal. It is easier than all the other levels in the game as far as the enemy layout, but the thing is, on the first level, you suck. Like, you can't go to the store to buy any moves, because you don't start in the store, you start in level 1, so you just have the basic moveset, and you're not good at the game yet, so you'll probably die a bunch of times. So I understand why that would be very frustrating for newcomers, so I understand that part of why you can complain about the game, but, like... Once you get used to it, don't say it's hard. Like, we know and the game knows, too. Like, don't say, I don't like it because it's hard. Like, well, no, I mean, you can say I don't like it because it's hard, but don't give it a bad rating when that's the game's advertising point. That would be like me giving Madden a 4 out of 10 because I hate football.
I mean...
It's like, what did you think was going to happen?
I mean, nobody would blame you. Like, people who viewed your channel will probably give a Let's Play of Madden, like, a 3 out of 10, because that is not why they came to your channel.
No, but that's not what I'm saying, though. It's like... I'm not going to give a game a low quality rating because I don't like football. It's like, that's bullshit. Like what did I think I was going to play? Like, if it's a really damn good football game, it deserves a high number rating. I just wouldn't know what makes a good football game other than I feel good playing it. There's probably like a whole bunch of technical details that hardcore football players know. Like, I wouldn't even want to bother with the coaching segment of any of these games, for example, and that's like, for a lot of football people, that's a huge thing. So, like, I'm not the person you want to rate this game because I wouldn't understand how, like, where you would get a good rating from. But the point is, I'm not going to give a game a low score because it's a thing that I'm just not into. Like, ratings are supposed to be about game's quality. Like, otherwise... I could give every sports game ever a 0 out of 10 because I'm not into sports. It's like, well, that's a dumbass rating.
Well, I mean, that's why you have a podcast, so we can hear your unfiltered opinions on things.
Yeah.
I like to touch on just one thing to wheel back to the main topic a little bit, which is that I can't believe that we've been talking about completion for 40 hours and we barely mentioned Binding of Isaac or any of the roguelites.
That's a good point. Actually, speaking of the Binding of Isaac, the funny thing is I had platinumed Afterbirth Plus a while back, but then they're called booster packs, like additional DLC things came out that had more achievements. So if I hadn't platinumed the game, then I would have had to get those two to platinum it, but I still wanted to get those. So I did get a bunch, but then there was one achievement I just couldn't get, and I quit the game for like months, and I only got it just like a week ago. I was super hyped.
Nice.
It was. Did you ever unlock the item, the Book of the Dead?
What does it do? Maybe I don't remember.
Right. It's one of like the book power ups, but what happens is, when you use it, for every enemy in the room that you've killed up to that point, it will do one of like three things. It'll spawn a little rotating thing around you, like a little bone fragment that rotates around you that can absorb projectiles. There's a million things in Isaac that rotate around you and count as options, but once these things defend you or hit an enemy or something, they break, so they're just gone. Because you could kill like 100 enemies and get like 100 of those.
I will say that I might have had it when it was not required to be unlocked.
Okay.
Like because so just to give a little framing. So like at least from my perspective, I platinumed the original Rebirth when it came out. You know, I did it on the Vita, and then we were told that like all the expansion packs would not be available on Vita because it was too hard to put them.
That's
so I did Afterbirth all over again from scratch. And then Afterbirth Plus came out, and I did not quite finish that, but I was making some headway. I fell off because of the one where you had to do 5 daily missions in a row.
That was excruciating.
And I think I died on the 5th one, had to start all over again, and I fell off the game for a while. I did get it.
I died on like the 3rd or 4th, got so mad. Yeah.
Right. So and then like I got back into it because all these booster packs came out, so there's all this like new fun stuff to play with. And I wanted to get all the items before that became a thing, because the item list was just going to keep getting longer and longer and longer.
There's like 403 achievements now.
But I didn't know that they would, first off, they would stop the booster packs at 5 was one. 2 was that obviously they would make like dozens of extra achievements when the 5th booster pack came out, including an extra character. 3, they would announce an entire other expansion when this was supposed to be the end of Binding of Isaac. So I guess like why this really stands out to me is because like I had never really thought about this, but like Vice pointed out that like these games are not intended to be 100% completed like by anybody, and it's only like the complete like sociopaths like you and I who really like you and me who really like go through all the effort to do that. And it's really obvious with Enter the Gungeon, which is like a much more of a slog. Like in Vice thinks that Gungeon is not as hard as Isaac, but like. At least to me, it's much more difficult to become overpowered than it is in Isaac.
Okay. Like in Isaac, you can get some stupid combinations.
Like in the latest Gungeon update, they actually tuned down the HP thresholds for bosses. So you know, like in for like the Hush fight and a couple of the other really hard fights in Binding of Isaac, their HPs...
Those were bullshit, because like if you hit them too many times in rapid succession, you just start dealing like next to no damage. So you actually have to hit them for a little while, wait a few seconds, hit them for a little while.
So a lot of the time the explosive things like Ipecac are really good against them, because they only hit them once for a lot.
Yeah.
But in Gungeon, there's a cap on the amount of damage that you can do in a single shot to a boss, and they raised that recently, I guess, because it was too much of a slog. So you know
that's having a cap is pretty obnoxious. Mm-hmm. Like if you get lucky, you get lucky. No, but back to the Book of the Dead. By the way, it can make those little bone things that rotate against you, or there's a bit of a lesser chance of them spawning those little skeleton enemies that are allies, and there's an even lesser chance of spawning the black skeleton enemies. So the last achievement that I needed was spawn 3 of those black skeleton enemies at the same time.
Jesus.
So the odds it's not overly hard to do. Just like make sure that you go into a room with a million enemies and wipe the floor with them. Like if you go into a room with like 2 portals, or like one of those giant groups of flies, then you're set. But my problem was, for the life of me, I just couldn't find the Book of the Dead in the first place. That's like a daddy's long legs, or like the leaf rare level of item. I just could not find it. So I just like I couldn't even attempt the achievement. So I just got fed up. So I finally got it.
When you fight the there's like enemies that like they stretch out their necks and like the heads come at you and the necks.
Oh yeah, and if you could kill just the head and then the body runs around or whatever.
So if you use like the D10, all of the like links of the head, and there's like a dozen of them, they all count as separate enemies. So if you use like
I didn't realize that.
If you use the D10, like you're fucked because those all spawn into like unique enemies that are not passive like that.
That's pretty funny.
But I wonder if those count as separate enemies for the Book of the Dead.
I never realized that it was a thing. So I don't know. Maybe that's interesting.
I guess
it's kind of like Larry Jr., where if you like destroy like each of the segments kind of counts as its own thing. I don't know if it counts as its own enemy, but you can spawn more of them if you kill it in the middle.
Right.
I don't know.
So there's a bunch of games like this. We've talked before about how like the Breath of the Wild and Mario Odyssey, like you kind of want to complete them because like that's the game. They're exploration based games. Like in Mario Odyssey, you know there are so many moons that like the moons themselves are not valuable. The point of beating the levels is for the experience of saying that the game posited you a challenge and you cleared it. But they're intended so that like you just like freeform explore the worlds, and you know like the game rewards you for saying like, oh, I want to try to do this. What happens if I do this? Oh, I get a moon, or oh, I didn't think I could get up here, but I did. You know, and the developers recognize that I can do that. They put coins up here. You know, like that's a lot of the time how Nintendo's modern design philosophy seems to express itself. So like it's weird thinking about 100% completing the games because it doesn't feel like they're intended to be ever completed. And I don't mean to say that like obviously people do. It's not even necessarily that difficult. It's just not meant to be fun.
Well, no. Speaking of which, some of the payoffs are like intentionally weak, like the Zelda Korok Seed thing.
The golden
like, here
poop.
You go.
Yes. No, that's hilarious.
I remember even in Ocarina of Time when I got every single gold Skulltula. It just gives me it gives me infinite money, but by that point in the game, you have no use for money anymore.
I mean, yeah, like money is barely useful in the Zelda games most of the time to begin with.
In general, yeah, like the very beginning of the game and never again. In the Lego games, like Lego Star Wars, it just rains money everywhere because like, it's just like a victory lap because like there's nothing else to do. Although I will say later and later Lego games give you better and better stuff. Like I actually just recently 100%ed Lego Pirates of the Caribbean, where you unlock a new level which is called The Ride, and it's just kind of like the Pirates of the Caribbean ride. Okay. I was like, oh, that's clever.
That's very nice.
Or like when you perfect Harry Potter years 1 through 4, you can play like a Voldemort level where you're just wrecking London, and like it's kind of cool when you get an actual reward. Or like Sonic Adventure Director's Cut. I don't know if the original Sonic Adventure did it, but the Director's Cut certainly does. You can unlock Metal Sonic as a playable character. That just blew my mind back in the day.
I think it's Sonic Adventure 2 that you can unlock like a 3D version of the Green Hill Zone for.
Yeah, I never did that.
That's
so hard.
That's a very hard game to complete.
I actually did the Chow Garden,
nice.
And I got all A rankings for Tails and Eggman, but I couldn't pull it off with everybody else. It's excruciatingly difficult. And Bait and Kaidos, I don't think you get anything for 100%ing other than a sigh of relief.
The satisfaction.
Ugh.
My God, that so. So I know we've covered this before, but 100% completing Bot and Kaidos is so difficult that there is a week-long speed run where the theme is that someone is 100% completing Bot and Kaidos while everybody else plays other really long games.
Yeah, I mentioned this once before, but the speedrunner called The Mexican Runner did Mighty Number 9 at one of the Games Done Quicks, and he didn't actually follow through with this, but he was considering letting the 3-hour credits play and see how many games he could speedrun in that time, which would have been just amazing.
That's a really interesting donation gimmick, because he's also like a really prolific gamer. You know, he's the guy.
He's hardcore.
He's the guy who's beaten every NES game on stream, like live with no cheats.
He's destroyed. He's speedrun Cuphead as well. He's a freaking beast.
I love the guy. I'm subscribed to his channel. You should all check him out.
Good. He's so damn good.
So one last question, I guess, before we get to our fan responses for the week, I think would be nice. So what is your favorite reward for 100% completion? What do you in all of gaming?
That's actually really hard. I mean, I do kind of like unlocking a super secret character who's just ridiculously overpowered, or like an extra level or something. But it's very difficult for me to think of my favorite, like a specific favorite reward. Although I will say one that I got recently that felt pretty good was and this isn't any of the things I just described. It's just that I've never seen a game do it before. But if you platinum Bloodborne, you might have to contact Sony support to make this happen. But you should get a DLC code for a PlayStation 4 theme for having
cool.
platinumed it. Yeah, so it's like if you have the theme up, they're like, that means you must have platinumed the game. That's just kind of cool.
I'm gonna go with the Wild Arms games. So the later ones had what are called X-File keys. So they're intended for use if you like restart your game after you beat the game, and they they unlock stuff. And usually you get one for completing like every class of side quests in the game, and you can spend them as you choose, kind of like Tales style, where you like the grade in Tales, where you have like a shop at the end of the game where you can like unlock stuff for your next playthrough. And I just thought that was really cool. It's like a meta collection quest where you can spend the currency that you get for doing side quests as you please. And like a lot of the time they'll give you like one for free for beating the final boss, or for like doing something obscure like in a treasure chest in an out of the way area, because otherwise you wouldn't even realize these were a thing that you can get in the game. So like when they give you one for free, that's always kind of cool too, and it hints that you're like trying to collect these things.
I kind of like when a game lets you, like, again, this is pretty rare, but when a game lets you like play as the bad guy in their own scenario, or like unlock the bad guy, or some weird thing that you didn't think you should have any business doing, or like some weird final weapon or whatever. Although I will say, it feels weird to me when the super duper best weapon in the game is like way better than the weapon of lore. Like Zelda is notorious for this. Like the Master Sword is like the second worst weapon in the game.
Well,
it's like
so a good one is Final Fantasy 12, or like the ultimate weapon that you get for beating Gazmat, Omega Weapon, and like the fishing mini quest is Erdrick's Sword, and it makes like Dragon Warrior noises when you use the menu.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I do like stuff like that as well. Like Dead Space 2 had like the foam finger gun where you actually say bang, 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 pew, pew, pew as you fire it, and it just devastates whatever it hits.
Yeah, it should be fun to play. Like after you've stressed yourself out 100% completing the game, it should be something that like takes the edge off a little bit. And like I especially appreciate when it's something cosmetic, so you can like signal to other people that you managed to do it. Because like let's face it, like in general, like as cool as it is to like beat a video game and get 100% completion, like that since we're all talking about using like guides and YouTube videos, that like doing it means that like literally anybody can do it, as long as you have like the manual dexterity and like the capacity to play a video game for the most part. So like it doesn't have a lot of value. It just is fun to have and to broadcast to other people that you also love the game enough to complete it.
No, that's true, but some games, as mentioned before, like the Soulsborne games, are just hard. Like, I can look up how to fight Ornstein and Smog, but, like,
doesn't mean you can
die
do it
a few times. Yeah. But alright, yeah, at this point we can get to our fan reactions. So, Living Corpse says, this is in regard to the Game of Thrones discussion from last week. Sorry you got spoiled for Game of Thrones. I fucking hate that we've become a spoiler culture. I don't care if people want to spoil something for themselves, but they need to be considerate of others. I personally don't see the point in knowing everything before I see it, cause it, 1, lessens the impact of truly shocking twists, and 2, I'm gonna learn everything when I see the movie. The John Wick 4 being announced already, so like, spoilers,
yeah.
John Wick 3 ends with a cliffhanger, like obviously there's going to be a fourth movie, but like they shouted this out like 2 days after the movie came out, so like even if you hadn't seen the movie, John Wick lives, So the John Wick 4 announced reminds me of how Spider-Man had a new movie announced before Infinity War came out. That's a good point, actually.
So they were
Spider-Man Far From Home. Spoiler: Spider-Man survives the Infinity War.
They were kind of on the record saying that when they were in production for Spider-Man Homecoming, they considered it to be an alternate universe from Avengers Endgame, and that it would just be non-canonical if they had to kill off Spider-Man permanently in Endgame. But
fair enough.
So like no spoilers for Endgame in particular. Like that was how they claimed it to be. Or that the whole thing took place before Endgame or something. Because there are Marvel movies that came out. For example, Ant-Man and the Wasp came out after Infinity War, but takes place before it.
Okay, fair enough. All right, got me there then. So It's gotten to the point where movie companies have given up and seem to spoil movies themselves, so a-holes don't get the satisfaction of being the ones who ruined others' enjoyment of something. I remember people used to make videos talking about spoilers. They put a warning off the start. There's going to be spoilers later. But now they put right in the damn thumbnail and title, so you don't even need to click on it and watch it. I report those as spam. Yeah, that is some bullshit when you see some video with, like, why I'm angry that X died in this movie. It's like, thanks. Mm-hmm. Or, like, the day after some anime episode comes out, like, the final battle against this guy who turns out to be the final boss. It's like, okay, thanks, so, I guess.
It is true. Like, unfortunately, people on social media have uncovered the secret that there's no such thing as bad publicity. And so, like, you ever watch the Howard Stern movie Private Parts? They talk about how they're talking about his ratings with respect to Don Imus, who used to be the king of the shock jock airwaves before Howard Stern started his show. And he talks about how, like, people who hated him watched him for substantially longer than people who loved him.
Oh, yeah, hate watching is absolutely a thing.
So I think that there are a lot of people on the internet who don't really care about the quality of the community and the kind of conversation they engender around the content that they produce. And, like, this is the outcome of that. That, like, anything that drives eyes to your video... Because, like, if you see something, like... I think that Living Corpse is the right attitude, that you just, like, don't watch it and report it as spam if you're really that offended by it. But most people don't do that. They click on the video and they yell at him in the comments, which is exactly what people want. They want you to be engaged with their content, even if it's for better or for worse. The negative part, of course, is that your community is garbage, because it's all built on people being angry in your comments and no like actual conversation going on. Like, I'm sure nobody actually really at least less than 75% of the people who commented on that video actually talked about or built on the opinions that person expressed in their video about the spoiler,
But yeah, it's like responding to clickbait. You read the title and you just talk about that. Mm-hmm. All right, so Leon Snape says, this is this is my fault. Just gotta pipe up. Vice was correct about the start button being block in the Genesis Mortal Kombat game. B and C were kicks, and A combined with directions was your 2-punch heights. I guess I forgot that, because I was more used to playing Mortal Kombat 3, where I think A and B was high punch, A was low punch, B and C was high kick, C was low kick, and start was run, and I think B was block for that, so I guess they changed across the games. I blew it!
Well, I'm
sorry, Vice.
Perfectly happy to tell Vice
we'll
that he was correct.
celebrate 150th episode by you not hearing this.
Yes, because he's not here, so I have to tell him to his face.
Yeah, it was all a waste, sorry. Alright, so Dracologist says... this one was a surprise. In Doom 2... you can find, like, Commander Keen guys, like, hanging, and you can kill them to exit the level in, like, a secret level. So Dracologist says, the hanged Commander Keen was a result of an ownership feud between id and Apogee, which was later 3D Realms. Since the first 3 Keen games, I think, was id, while the later were Apogee, and id was not happy about it. Like, wow, damn. Got me there. Anthony Cooper says, I don't know, Lotus, which is better? Home Alone 2's "Get out of here, you little pervert, or I'm gonna slap you silly," or Corpse Party's "Close the damn door." Both of those are quite good, actually.
I'm interested about that Keen thing, because I did actually buy the first 5 Commander Keen games in one pack on Steam.
6.
Right, so I think it's only missing one of them, and I think that one is the one that just came out on Switch.
Oh, okay.
So I'm curious what the provenance of that is, given this like problem between id and Apogee, because I bought them as a pack with in the like the QuakeCon sale, so they've managed to reacquire at least 2 of them.
Yeah. So the last comment is General Ledger, who says, on the topic of rooting for the villain, like, when have you found yourself rooting for the villain? Just about any time a villain tries to dominate, like Lex Luthor. Like, Lex Luthor's eventual smackdown is glorious. Similar to Peck, like Walter Peck from Ghostbusters, the Turks from FF7, they are ruthless agents of a tyrannical government, but the PCs are terrorists that blew up a nuclear plant and endangered, if not killed, innocent civilians. Yeah, literally the first thing in Final Fantasy VII that you're doing is, like, a terrorist operation. I also found Silver Age Reed Richards more insufferable than Doom. Yeah, I don't know about Silver Age versus Bronze or Golden Age or what, but isn't Reed Richards generally just like a dick?
I mean, yeah, this is an entire trope, is that, like, Reed Richards is, like, supposedly the greatest genius that humanity has to offer. And yet he doesn't ever seem to use it to solve any of humanity's actual problems. He just, like, goes off into space.
No, but he's also just, like, an asshole, though, isn't he?
Yes, that is also true.
But anyway, he says, I didn't want Doom to win so much as I did Reed to lose. That's a very interesting distinction.
Doom is also insufferable, but he suffered for his insufferableness in the form of his mask, so, like, he has also, at least a little pathos.
And Doom gets a couple of points for being, like for talking like a comic book character. Like, he's laughably theatrical. Like, you have not seen the last of Doom? Like, it's ridiculous. He's the only character who talks like that. It's so good. And finally, Ledger says, or better, have Sue outsmart them both for all the sexist crap they flung at her. No kidding. Okay, so the question we have is also from General Ledger. What makes for good cover art on a book, game box, movie poster, whatever? That sometimes depends on what the thing is that we're talking about. For example, I know that American stuff loves to put characters' faces right up there, but like that can be great if you already know who the character is. Like for Marvel stuff, here are all the pictures of the Avengers' faces. Great, they're going to be in the movie. Cool. But then you have like Ico for the PS2, where it's just a kid wearing a horned helmet, and you're like, what the fuck is this? Like, no wonder nobody bought this. And then you see the Japanese art, where it's like very tiny people running through a large landscape of like windmills, and I'm like, that's actually representative of what you're playing. So that's something where I would like the environment more. Meanwhile, you have like the Ant-Man poster. Do you remember the Ant-Man poster where it looked completely white, and only if you got really close you could see a little tiny person on it? That was brilliant. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I'm talking about? Have you seen that one?
I mean, like, since you've described it to me, like, I can imagine.
Yeah, I assume you can understand.
And I don't think
that
you really need to. Yeah, I can see it now. Yeah, wow,
it's brilliant. Like, you might actually miss it. You're like, did they forget to put a picture on? No, they did not. I love stuff like that.
So I will be fair that, like, the only reason that's good is because, like, you might, like, get close to it to, like, look at the tiny little speck in the middle. And that will, like, make you engaged with the poster as opposed to just kind of walking by it because it looks the same as all the other movie posters in the theater.
Yeah, it looks like just all white. Like, what? There's something different about this. Yeah. I also appreciate, by the way, I don't know if this fully answers the question regarding what makes good art, but I do appreciate when, like, it doesn't spoil a key aspect of the movie. For example, the Alien movie poster was just a picture of an egg with glowy green stuff on it. It doesn't actually show the alien, which is good because you don't get a good look at the alien until a pretty good way into the movie. So if it just put that all over the poster, you'd be like, okay, well, because when you see the movie, you'd be like, there it is. Mm-hmm. So I appreciate that posters, like, this is mainly for movies, but I appreciate when they are thematically appropriate without giving away too much. But when it comes to something like Infinity War or Endgame, everybody knows what those movies are going to be. I mean, well, Endgame has real spoiler potential, but for Infinity War, just putting all the Marvel characters together, it's like, yes, look at this epic team up. Like, it's visual confirmation of what you were expecting.
Look, actually, now that I think about it, like, Marvel used to do a slightly better job at, like, hiding the content of some of their movies. I think it was, like, Civil War when they were going to do that. They announced it originally as, like, Sinister Squad or something totally different.
But like Sinister Six or something?
No, not Sinister Six. They gave it some other subtitle. It looked really out of place in a series of movies that were very obviously based around like flags, like touchstone Marvel characters. And then all of a sudden it was this like random thing that nobody really understood what it was about, except maybe it was a reference to the Captain America Hail Hydra thing that had been in the news lately. But otherwise, like, yes, eventually it became Civil War, which turned into like the biggest movie in the franchise prior to Infinity War.
Yep.
But like at least you had some time between the announcement of the slot in the phase versus like actually finding out what it was about.
Well, I mean, regarding stuff like that, one of the more famous examples of this, I think, is the Return of the Jedi's working title was, well, not actual working title, but, like, fake title was Blue Harvest.
Nice.
So nobody would be like, oh, a Star Wars movie, they're making another one. So, like, nobody had heard of Blue Harvest. And, like, at best, maybe you've heard of, I think it was, like, a book, Red Harvest. Mm-hmm. And, like, but, like, I don't know who would have made that connection. Oh. But then it was Star Wars. Like, it was an actual secret, which is pretty pleasant.
I also appreciate that like a lot of movies these days are like so, especially really big films like Avengers, are so like heavy on the CGI and the green screening that like you can actually keep the actors away from each other for like large portions of the filming, except for the big climactic scenes. Yeah, so like the odds of somebody of like something being captured by accident or something leaking out are like surprisingly low.
That is true. I never thought about that. Yeah, like if you see like the really big celebrities all in one room together, you're like, oh.
And also
but,
like all the important stuff is filmed and is added in post. Like it's added in editing, right? So like you can film a lot of extra stuff.
Well, that's true. Like you would have Thanos' actor snap his fingers and then nothing happens,
and
like,
you'd have no idea. Like so like that might actually happen. And in fact, I think it does. But like it's the context is makes no sense whatsoever.
No, but what I mean is like the snap that ended the movie Infinity War.
Yeah.
Like if somebody saw that happen, just there would be nothing.
Well, I mean
you
that's
wouldn't know what that was.
That's
until
enough
post.
of an iconic scene that
No, it is now. But I mean, if you saw it happen, you'd be like, well, what's going to happen as a result? Because you can't see who disappears. That doesn't happen in real life. As far as with books, I think there's a little more leeway to just have like weird stuff. It's not quite like music album weird, but like books can go in very different directions. Like there might be one particular aspect of the book that's focused on the cover versus like a character. It might be like a theme or something. One cover I actually quite like is for my copy of Don Quixote. It's a very, very sketchy, scribbly looking drawing where it's like stick figures of windmills. You could barely tell they're windmills if you don't already know the story. There's like a very quickly, crudely drawn, lanky, tall, thin guy on a four-legged animal and a shorter, fatter guy on a four-legged animal. And if you like, the thing is, Don Quixote is so iconic that even if you hadn't read the book, you might know what that is already. It's the main characters in front of windmills, like the most famous scene in the book. It's a pretty cool minimalistic way of capturing like the book's going to have more stuff like this. You've probably heard of this scene. Like, chasing windmills is an expression in modern English vernacular. But here it is. Here's that thing you know, and there's like 1,000 more pages of other stuff, which is just kind of interesting to me.
I mean, I would agree that is, if you're going to do an artistic representation of the characters, I like something like that, where it's like very abstract, and you have to read it kind of makes you wonder what the book is about, and you have to read it to understand what the context of the picture is. I'm a little tired, and I understand why it happens, but I'm a little exhausted by, like, modern movie posters, which are often just, like, the faces of the characters with, like, the...
Well, no, that's what I was saying earlier.
Yeah, I know, you mentioned this.
It's a very American style.
More than just the faces, but also, like, the idiom of having them with the red and blue contrast, or failing that, like, the purple and yellow contrast.
No, the orange and blue contrast. Remember when that was, like, every movie ever in, like, the mid-2000s?
It still kind of is. Like, a lot of the time, most movies have at least one poster that has, like, that kind of... kind of just juxtaposition somewhere. The alternative, which I don't mind if you don't want to do that, is just like a very clean title and like very simple art or like no art whatsoever, like the Final Fantasy games.
If it's iconic enough, like if you just see the fonts, you're like, all right, I think I know what this is. I could see that working. Like just the font of the series with the next number up, like Elder Scrolls, like Elder Scrolls 6. That's all you need. You're like, oh, there's another one.
Like the Star Wars movies. The Star Wars title over a starry background is enough to get you excited about the movie.
No. You know what genuinely got me? Speaking of Star Wars, especially this genuinely got me. The Last Jedi, just the Star Wars logo in red. That was it. I was like, oh shit, this is a big deal.
The Last Jedi, you say? That seems like not a lot of Jedis.
Well, no, I mean, not even that. Just the fact that the Star Wars logo is in red, because that's never happened.
Oh, yeah.
It's been 30 years of that being in yellow, and this time it was in red.
Very
and
true.
it feels so off that it affects you more than you might think it would. Although, actually, what you were saying with the orange and blue being like every poster, that's actually one thing I remember really got tired for a lot of those military first-person shooter games. Like Call of Duty, Battlefield, even fucking Doom 2016 disappointed me with its cover, was the single soldier walking toward the foreground.
Yeah.
It's just every damn game has that.
Well, I mean, that could be considered as part of the title. It doesn't have to be considered part of the title, but, like, basically the same box art every time.
Yeah, it's iconic every time. It's like, it's a soldier.
It's
like, all right.
Like if you cry every time.
Yeah, and like the Doom 2016 soldier cover art was just like the Doom guy standing there. Like Doom's original art was so iconic, where he's like fighting Hellspawn, and here he's just like it was just a Battlefield cover, and I know that Master Chief looks like the Doom guy, but in this case the Doom guy looked like Master Chief, and I was like, ah man. And then they were like, what about this alternate art? I was like, that's way better. And meanwhile, Doom 2016 is like one of the best games, one of the best first-person shooters ever made. But that cover was just so generic.
I will say that Doom, like the logo by itself, probably doesn't need a lot of extra bells and whistles to sell itself.
It does not. No, that's one of those things you could see at E3, just Doom, and you're like, well, that's it. I know exactly what this means. I mean, they've already announced Doom Eternal, so we actually have something to expect. But like, if they just show the Doom logo at E3 for 5 seconds and fade to black, like that's it. That's it. We're good. Like that, I know exactly what that means.
Mm-hmm.
That'd actually be a really cool thing as well. There are a bunch of games that do that once they've become iconic enough, where it's just like the cover's all black with just a name or just like a small picture of us, something iconic, like The Witcher 2 was just like the Witcher medallion, and you're like, oh, there it is. So like I can see that's the kind of thing working as well.
Yeah,
but you gotta earn that though.
I like symbology, a little bit more. Like I guess I'm just a little tired of the people. Like I know that people connect to faces when they look at them, but
yeah, but if you know nothing about the game in advance, like who's this guy?
So, but like
you only get to do that with Avengers stuff because you should know who they are by now. It's been 15 years.
Well, I'm just thinking of like books. Like a lot of the time for like a fantasy novel, the book cover is just like a painting of the characters, which often looks just like a generic fantasy painting, even if you know who the people are supposed to be.
Conan
like,
the Barbarian.
Sometimes I read the Wheel of Time, which was like an iconic series, and the second book has like people on it, and it's like very clear that the orcs, or they're called Trollocs in Wheel of Time, but they're basically orcs. They're like the artist clearly didn't get it right, and they're just like black people, and it comes across as like profoundly racist if you read the book and know what it's about.
No. Although actually, you know what I will say I do like though with people on the cover, it actually became a look for years. Was the Animorphs cover where it's a kid's face shifted more into animal, shifted more into animal, shifted more into animal, full animal.
Oh yeah,
so
those are great, but that's still like symbology more than it's like a character's face. That I can appreciate.
No, that's true, but like, that's even for the first book, you're like, oh, I get it. Animorphs, he morphs into an animal.
Also, it's like
got it,
it's
and
like
then the rest of the books were like, yes.
Very satisfying to me when all the book covers look the same on my shelf, and that's nice.
Yeah, that actually is really much appreciated. I remember Vice talked about how frustrating it was, speaking of which, with like the Danganronpa series when it first came out, the collector's edition of like Danganronpa 1 and 2, I think, like weren't the same size, and it was weird. Like, why would you do that?
So when I collected Nintendo Power, somewhere around the time that the N64 came out, they went back to perfect binding, and they printed like a little like fragment of an image of Mario on like each issue, so that when you put it together, I thought it was supposed to make like a picture of Mario for like a year's worth of issues.
VHS box sets did that back in the day.
But they like double printed one of them, so Mario looked really fat and it was dumb.
Oh no!
And I don't think it was like the same one twice in a row. I think it was an earlier one, so it looked really ugly when I put them all on my shelf together.
Actually, speaking of which, this is the last thing I'll bring up. There's an example of that done right. Have you ever seen the DVD set for the TV show Monk?
I have not.
It is the best. Okay, so for people who don't know, Monk was a TV show about a detective who was really brilliant about finding minutia and solving all sorts of really like crazy, difficult to solve mysteries. But he had obsessive compulsive disorder, like crippling obsessive compulsive disorder, where like there was an episode that ended where like, he had remarked earlier in the episode that he'd never gotten trophies for when he was like in some, I forgot what, like his little kiddie soccer team or spelling bees or little school things, and he'd never gotten trophies, and he kind of felt bad about that because his mom gave him crap. So the episode concluded with his assistants getting him trophies for every case he'd solved up to that point, and it was like 109 or something. And he's like, I got you all these trophies, and he goes, and she immediately interrupts him with, I rounded it down to 100. He's like, okay. Like, so it's like stuff like that. He's very, very neurotic all the time. The DVD set, like the DVDs, the boxes go together really well. It's very simple. I'm not going to talk about the cover art, just the bindings. It's like we were talking about the Mario. They don't make a picture, but it's just like, it was either red top, white bottom, or white top, red bottom, just so you have something to look at other than a single color. But the very last DVD case is the color order is reversed just because it would bother you to look at it. It doesn't make the set.
Nice.
And it does that like on purpose as a nod to Monk himself. I thought that was amazing. So like even people who don't have obsessive compulsive disorder could be like, I wish it matched though. Like you don't need obsessive compulsive disorder to see like a poster on the wall that's clearly askew and feel bothered about it. So the DD set does that on purpose. Like the last color set is just wrong, and it doesn't go flush when you have it all lined up. It's fantastic.
I was gonna say something like I didn't know that was where this was going, but like I was gonna say like it would be pretty funny if you had like a thing that you're building towards over the course of like a year, like the Nintendo Power thing, and then like the last one was like intentionally wrong or like revealed a secret.
Yeah, well that's exactly what it was. Yeah, so like if you've been buying the DVDs as they came out, the last one is wrong, and you're like, oh no, it's so good.
What a brilliant decision. I can't do anything about this. This is how it is forever.
But it was on purpose, so like it's a brilliant decision.
Yeah, exactly. I wonder if like secretly you could turn it around to the flip side and it was like correctly oriented.
No, it's not 50-50. I remember that. So like even from the beginning, like
no, I mean like you flip it backwards, like the back end of it, so that not upside down. Like like you take the sometimes like video games will have a printing on the back of the DVD cover insert, like the case cover insert.
Oh, a reverse cover or whatever. Maybe. I don't know, but I want to say I doubt it.
I mean, it wouldn't be as funny, but like the joke is that you see it and it's wrong, and then later you can fix it if you feel so compelled.
That actually would be a pretty good next level to the joke. Oh, by the way, one more thing regarding Americans' obsession with faces.
You lied to me.
Yeah, this will be real quick. But did you ever see the cover art for Corpse Party Blood Drive?
I have not. What about it?
It's just Ayumi's face, like, looking scared. Just like, oh my god, which does make sense. The game is largely revolves around her. But the Japanese art is, like, genuinely... chilling isn't quite the right word. But it's a major gut punch. I'm not going to describe exactly what it is because it's spoilers, but the thing is, in Corpse Party, it's established that if people die in Heavenly Host, then they are, like, completely erased from existence, like, people's memories. And if you have a picture of them, it even gets to the point where their face is somehow blacked out. I don't know what kind of weird-ass sorcery makes that happen, but the Japanese cover for Blood Drive is a class photo where several of the faces are blacked out from, like, the previous game, and it's like... Wow.
Yeah, that's pretty messed up.
It's fucked up. Like, when I first saw that, I didn't know we were getting that either. It turns out that the American release of Corpse Party Blood Drive has reversible cover art. But when I first saw, like, on Twitter or something, someone posted the Japanese art, I was like, whoa. Mm-hmm. Like, that hit hard.
Nice.
That is a perfect thematic depiction of what to expect. It's the third game in the series, so I hope you've played the first one. If you haven't, it won't mean anything, which is actually pretty great, because it's not a spoiler, because you don't know what it signifies. But if you have played the other games, then oh boy.
Then you probably shouldn't look at the Japanese box art.
Yeah, if you're in the middle of playing the first game, then do not look at the Japanese box art for the third game. Weirdly specific advice, but there you go. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so do you have any other thoughts?
No, I think we covered this one pretty well.
All right. So that's the show for this week. We want to thank all of our fans who contributed questions. Please keep us supplied with awesome topics by submitting questions of your own on the YouTube and SoundCloud pages. While there, please give us thumbs ups, likes, and 5-star ratings on iTunes. It helps us promote and spread awareness of the show, and any bit of encouragement keeps the show going. You can also catch us on Tuesdays on our sister podcast, Corrective Consciousness, the in-depth look at this week in our lives. Finally, you can follow me on my YouTube channel, Lotus Prince. You can hit me up on Twitter at Lotus Prince. And double finally, if you were interested in seeing my videos early, getting in on exclusive live streams, like I said, I'm about to wrap up Kingsfield, selecting upcoming games for me to Let's Play, like Alien Isolation, or getting involved in conversations with me or other patrons on Discord, then perhaps consider swinging by my Patreon account, which can be found at patreon.com/LotusPrince.
And you can find me as OldManStompy on most major gaming and social media networks. And of course, you can talk to our friends of the stream, Vice the Bold and Pyrojack Frost, on their respective account names. Although, why would you? You can wait a week and one of them will be back.
Vice isn't ever coming back.
Nope,
that's our 150th anniversary prize.
The final episode of Corrective Consciousness.
Oh no,
We're rebranding next week.
we're rebranding to Reactive Consciousness for Tuesday, and then we're going to rebrand again to Corrective Consciousness on
I got you.
Thursday.
You thought you were free of us.
So thank you very much once again. Until next time, everyone.
Cheers.